The series begins by introducing a man named Huyang, a highly skilled financial planner. Huyang has returned to Korea after spending 10 years studying and building his career in America. He plans to stay in Korea for only 10 days, feeling that he has no friends there and finding little that interests him. During his stay, Huyang will be living with his uncle in his grandmother's old house, which was passed down to his mother. His uncle, Wook, invites Huyang out for a meal, but Huyang declines because he has already made plans for a blind date arranged by a close friend. Arriving at the restaurant, Huyang sits calmly, waiting. Soon, a woman dressed in green with a sweet fringe hairstyle sits down and greets him. She introduces herself as Hongju, assuming that Huyang is her blind date, set up by Heiji. Meanwhile, Huyang feels a surge of unexpected emotions toward her, as though she stirs up memories deeply etched within him. This encounter, however, turns out to be a misunderstanding, as the man intended for Hongju is actually seated at the next table, wearing a red suit. Hongju realizes this when another woman arrives and greets the man she was supposed to meet. After Hongju leaves, Huyang finds himself unable to take his eyes off her. Distracted, he becomes cold and unfocused when his blind date, named Miso, tries to engage him in conversation. Huyang, still captivated by Hongju, eventually chooses to ignore Miso entirely. Later that evening, while stopped at a red light, Huyang spots Hongju again, sitting at a bus stop. Her distinctive way of tying her hair and styling her fringe assures Huyang that she is indeed the woman he knew a decade ago. Seeing her enjoying street food, Huyang approaches and orders the same snack. Huyang then greets her once more, confirming that she is, in fact, the person he remembers. Hongju acknowledges this and hints that at the restaurant, she had only pretended not to know him. She also encourages Huyang to reconnect with his old friends while he's in Korea. Huyang agrees and shares his phone number with her. Suddenly, Hongju remarks that Heiji would be pleased to know that Huyang has returned to Korea. Without hesitation, Huyang asks if Hongju missed him as well. This unexpected question flusters Hongju, causing her to spill her drink on his suit. Panicking, Hongju rushes off, informing the food vendor that she will cover Huyang's meal with her change. The scene flashes back to 10 years ago, to the first time they met on a bus heading to school. Hongju, who had fallen asleep, worries the driver, who asks Huyang to wake her. Regardless of her destination, Huyang must make sure she gets off the bus. As they nearly reach the school gate and spot several students being disciplined, Hongju realizes she's late and could be in serious trouble. To avoid punishment, Hongju pretends that her tardiness was due to helping Huyang, who she claims was dealing with a leg injury. But Huyang plays along by claiming not to know her at all, resulting in Hongju receiving punishment while Huyang is excused because of his supposed injury. During class, Huyang catches sight of Hongju in the garden hall. He watches her intently from the window, hinting that he might already feel an attraction toward her. During the break, Hongju spends time with Heiji. In this moment, Heiji confides in her that she has a crush on one of the top students in their grade, none other than Huyang. Hongju feels slightly disappointed upon learning that Heiji's crush is the same annoying guy she encountered that morning. Still, deep down, she decides to support her friend in pursuing romance with whoever she likes. One day, Heiji wants to confess her feelings to Huyang by giving him a love letter, but she lacks the courage to do it herself. Feeling desperate, Heiji finally asks Hongju for help. After some persuasion and a little bargaining, Hongju agrees to deliver the letter on Heiji's behalf. When Huyang receives the letter and realizes it's from Heiji, his expression shows disappointment, suggesting that he might have feelings for Hongju instead. Returning to the present day, Hongju makes a call to Heiji that evening. During their conversation, Hongju mentions that Heiji's first love, Huyang, has returned to Korea. Heiji is thrilled to hear that Huyang is back and wonders if he's been doing well. She then advises Hongju to start dating soon, suggesting she should at least meet the man she was set up with 3 times. But Hongju brushes it off, feeling there are far more important things to focus on than dating. That morning marks Huyang's first day as the head financial planner at Rock Asset Korea, his family's company headquartered in America. Later, after a meeting, Huyang tells his uncle that the car he borrowed yesterday was towed for illegal parking. Upon learning that the incident was due to Huyang meeting his first love, Uncle Wook is surprisingly understanding and decides not to be upset with him. Meanwhile, with Hongju's help, Heiji happily contacts Huyang just to chat and catch up. Huyang agrees to meet her, accepting the welcome party planned by Heiji. Huyang then dresses up for the event, especially after hearing that Hongju will attend. However, it seems Hongju will be late to the reunion held at the restaurant owned by their fellow alumni, Sangpil, due to a commitment. She has been instructed to attend a director's party to present a gift on behalf of her boss. Unexpectedly, upon arriving at the director's party, Hongju runs into her first love, Junho, which made their reunion feels awkward. After the event, somehow, Hongju arrives at the reunion heavily intoxicated. Her sweet, slightly inebriated manner seems to captivate Huyang. After the dinner party, Huyang takes care of Hongju, ensuring she gets home safely. Swaying slightly, Hongju shares her thoughts on her first love with Huyang, saying that first loves feel special because they only happen once. However, first love fades over time, eventually becoming a memory without the intense emotions it once held. She warns Huyang that there's no need to dwell on one's first love. But Huyang has a different view. When he sees Hongju, he feels his first love rekindling. The next morning, Hongju recalls the embarrassing things she did in front of everyone the previous night. Shortly after, Heiji arrives, and they have breakfast together. Hongju then mentions that she ran into Junho before the reunion, feeling she couldn't avoid him that evening. She is confident she acted appropriately, showing little reaction during their brief encounter. Meanwhile, Heiji shares that she admires Huyang even more now, as he's more handsome and mature. Hongju reacts with mild irritation, questioning how Heiji can still care about him after being ignored so often. After all, Huyang never once responded to the love letters Heiji sent him countless times in the past. In a flashback, Heiji feels deeply saddened by being ignored, prompting Hongju to bravely confront Huyang. She even posts a message on the classroom board, urging him to acknowledge Heiji's feelings. But to Hongju's frustration, this did nothing to change his attitude, and Huyang continued to act distant with Heiji. Despite the time of 10 years, Heiji still holds onto the belief that she once received a fortune reading predicting she would live in America. She interprets this as a sign that she and Huyang are meant to be together. Unexpectedly, Huyang's apartment turns out to be close to Hongju's, directly below hers. Huyang realizes this while accompanying her home that night. Meanwhile, Hongju receives a call from Uncle Wook, asking her to take his nephew, who has just arrived from America, out for a day. This request from Uncle Wook is actually Huyang's idea. Since Uncle Wook once shared a photo of a young girl with long hair, Hongju assumes his niece must be a girl. But she's mistaken. Once back at her apartment, she sees Huyang instead of the young girl she had expected from the photo. Reluctantly, Hongju finds herself spending the day with Huyang, showing him around Seoul. Their first stop is an amusement park where they enjoy various rides. Throughout the day, Hongju tries repeatedly to contact Heiji to ask her to join them, but receives no response as Heiji is busy hiking with her father. After enjoying the rides, Hongju challenges Huyang to a spicy noodle eating contest. Next, they visit a historical site and try on traditional hanbok attire. While Huyang helps capture photos of Hongju, he seems drawn to her charm and beauty. Because of this, they both have such a good time that, without realizing it, they grow closer. Meanwhile, Heiji is shown spending time with Junho, revealing a family connection between them. In a rather sarcastic tone, Heiji warns Junho not to interfere with Hongju, reminding him that their relationship ended 3 years ago. Elsewhere, Hongju and Huyang are seen chatting in his car on a rainy night. Huyang attempts to clear up a misunderstanding from when Hongju spoke bluntly while drunk. In the cozy atmosphere, they accidentally share a romantic gaze, leaving them both feeling awkward. When Huyang shows her a sweet gesture, Hongju can't control the racing of her heart. 10 years earlier, they had a falling out when Hongju persistently urged Huyang to respond to Heiji's confession. At the time, Hongju didn't realize that Huyang was hiding his feelings for her. His heart broke the most when Hongju told him she'd never like a guy who couldn't understand love like Huyang. Despite her harsh words, all she really wanted was for him to reject Heiji gently if he didn't feel the same way. Over the years, as Hongju continued delivering Heiji's love letters to Huyang, his affection for Hongju quietly grew. Once, when she had dozed off in the library and was about to hit her head on the table, he gently cushioned her cheek to prevent her from getting hurt. Not only that, Huyang also secretly helped her with her writing assignments. Back in the present, Hongju arrives at the office to find her coworkers giving her strange looks. She is called upstairs, and to her surprise, she finds Junho in the room. In the past, she had bitter memories of Junho. When he went abroad, he abruptly broke up with her without any explanation. Now, Junho plans to adapt his novel into an animated series, and Hongju is assigned the role of producer for the project. Knowing she'll have to work closely with him, Hongju feels uneasy. At the same time, Huyang hints to his uncle that he plans to stay in Korea a while longer. Returning to Hongju, although she and Junho share a bitter past, she hopes they can remain professional at work and keep past emotions out of their interactions. Suddenly, Junho confesses that he has been thinking about her for the past 3 years. He expresses a desire to rekindle their relationship, but Hongju firmly rejects him and quickly walks away. By coincidence, she encounters Uncle Wook and Huyang outside. Seeing that her ex is bothering her, Huyang immediately takes Hongju's hand, pretending to be her new romantic interest to protect her from further discomfort. After playing along, they hide together until they are certain Junho has left. Hongju thanks Huyang for his help and then quickly leaves. Later, her colleagues, including her boss, Mrs. Bei, learn about her past relationship with Junho. Though this makes Hongju uncomfortable, the team leader urges her to set aside her personal feelings, as this project is a rare opportunity to advance her career as an animation film producer. Not only that, Mrs. Bei advises her to learn from the experience, suggesting that there's no perfect love in real life and that she'd be better off focusing on her work instead of dwelling on romance. After Uncle Wook informs Huyang that the man with Hongju was Junho, Huyang recalls past memories, realizing that Junho was Hongju's first love 10 years ago. Back then, Huyang had once helped Hongju write an extensive recommendation for a library book, one of which was a book authored by Junho. He remembers a day when he saw Hongju skipping class to follow Junho to Seoul National University. Without her knowing, Huyang quietly followed her. Upon reaching Chaiwon Terminal, Hongju realized she was being followed by Huyang, who quickly made up an excuse, saying he was lost. Hongju then invited him to join her, leading him to a military barracks. Heartbroken, Huyang watched as Hongju dressed up and admitted she was planning to confess her feelings to Junho. She confided that she was so nervous her heart was racing. Later, Huyang shared this memory with his uncle, leading Uncle Wook to realize that his nephew's first love was none other than Hongju, their neighbor. Uncle Wook is taken aback to learn that the real reason Huyang delayed returning to America was because of his feelings for Hongju. He worries that Huyang may like her too much, doubting his nephew's chances with her since he suspects that Huyang is not Hongju's type. Meanwhile, Heiji is shown talking with Kyo-won-taek, the man previously set up for a date with Hongju. Curious, Heiji asks why he hasn't arranged a follow-up date with her friend. In truth, Kyo-won-taek has strong feelings for Heiji, but he lacks the courage to tell her. On the other hand, after discovering that Junho was Hongju's first love, Huyang becomes uneasy. He barely reacts when he receives the good news of his promotion, as his thoughts are consumed by Hongju. After work, Huyang runs into Hongju, and she invites him to grab some fried chicken. However, Huyang feels disappointed when he realizes she has also invited Heiji along. As they chat, Huyang makes a passing comment, calling Hongju foolish and oblivious even after 10 years, clearly alluding to Junho. Hearing this, Hongju feels insulted and leaves abruptly, giving Heiji a chance to spend some time alone with Huyang. Yet, Heiji grows suspicious. She's noticed how often Huyang has been around Hongju since arriving in Korea, and their encounters don't seem coincidental. She then asks Huyang outright if he likes Hongju, and he admits it. Though Heiji feels heartbroken, she tries to be understanding. She reflects that Huyang hasn't been a part of Hongju's life, and for the past 10 years, Hongju has leaned solely on her. As a result, Heiji warns him that winning Hongju's heart won't be easy, nor will he easily replace her in Hongju's life. Meanwhile, Hongju heads to Sangpil's restaurant, confiding in him about the project she's leading as the main producer alongside Junho. Hearing this, Sangpil is upset, hoping Hongju would steer clear of that man. However, Hongju insists she has no other choice and asks him not to mention this to Heiji. The next day, in her room, Hongju opens a box filled with mementos of her time with Junho. In truth, her dream of becoming an animation producer was inspired by his work. When she first started out, she didn't have the qualifications, but her determination and willingness to learn pushed her forward. She even dreamed of adapting Junho's novel, My Avant-Gardener Lover, into an animated film. After a night of reflection, Hongju decides to meet with Mrs. Bay and confirms her commitment to producing Junho's novel as an animation. She is resolved to lead this project as the primary producer. Meanwhile, after careful thought, Huyang finally decides to return to America. The uncertainty of winning Hongju's heart plays a part in his choice to leave. At the same time, Heiji shares her concerns with Kyoan-taek, seeking advice on what to do when one's first love falls for their closest friend. Kyoan-taek responds that he would try to let go, happy at least that his friend has found someone new or someone good to love. Heiji agrees, finding comfort in his words. The scene flashes back to 10 years ago, showing a devastated Hongju after failing to find Junho at his military base. Determined not to leave the town until she confessed her feelings, Hongju even had a breakdown over lunch, crying openly in front of Huyang. Later that afternoon, Huyang accompanied Hongju back to the military base, where they learned that Junho's unit had been relocated to the border zone. Disappointed, Hongju returned home, knowing she wouldn't be able to see Junho for another 6 months. In the present day, Huyang receives a call from Heiji, informing him that Hongju has been in a car accident. Without hesitation, Huyang cancels his flight. Though her injuries aren't severe, Hongju has suffered cuts on her leg and head. She has no family around. Even as a teen, her father had cruelly considered sending her to an orphanage. In other words, Hongju was abandoned by both parents early on and has had no one to rely on, even during times of illness. When Hongju finally wakes up, she finds Huyang by her side. At that moment, Hongju reassures him that she's okay and insists he shouldn't worry and should go home. However, Huyang is there for a reason. He gently places Hongju's hand on his chest, subtly conveying his feelings for her. Sensing something unusual, Hongju begins to wonder if Huyang might like her, but quickly dismisses it, thinking it must be a delusion. Shortly after, Heiji arrives at the hospital with Kyoan-taek to visit Hongju. As she steps out of the car, Heiji nearly stumbles, and Kyoan-taek kindly offers her his shoes so she can walk comfortably, making Heiji blush. Hongju soon decides to leave the hospital, preferring not to stay. In the lobby, she asks Huyang to stop flirting with her. She feels that his actions have confused her, leading her to misunderstand his intentions, and suspects he might treat all women this way because he's lived in America. Before Huyang can respond, Heiji arrives, followed shortly by Uncle Wook, who appears angry and pushes Huyang's forgotten suitcase from the taxi into the lobby after his unexpected trip to the hospital. To reassure Hongju that she no longer harbors feelings for Huyang, Heiji stages a little act, claiming she now has feelings for Kyoan-taek and is actually dating him. Her goal is to encourage Hongju to get closer to Huyang. Heiji even makes sure Huyang takes Hongju home. Although this makes Hongju feel slightly awkward, she has no choice but to go along with it. The scene flashes back to 10 years ago, where Hongju and Huyang missed the last bus after leaving the military base, leaving them stranded and unable to return to Seoul that night. While searching for a place to stay, Huyang slips while adjusting his shoe and falls into a reservoir undergoing repairs. Seeing him fall, Hongju scrambles to find a way to help him. In the process, Huyang suddenly slips deeper, appearing to sink, prompting Hongju to jump in after him. Both end up trapped there, finally climbing out at sunrise with the help of soldiers. Back in the present, Huyang keeps a close watch over Hongju, concerned as she struggles with the stairs and almost trips. Swiftly, he steadies her. Beyond his attentiveness, Huyang even buys her food and offers to bring her a medicinal recipe. Elsewhere, Heiji takes Uncle Wook and Kyo-won take out to eat at Sangpil's restaurant. During their conversation, Uncle Wook is surprised to learn that Huyang was Heiji's first love. However, Heiji assures him that she's fine with it, as it was a high school memory she since let go. Meanwhile, Huyang seems to linger constantly in Hongju's thoughts. She even dreams of romantic moments with him. Upon waking and realizing she's still in Huyang's apartment, she hurries up the stairs to her place on the floor above. Soon, Huyang arrives, gently carrying her up the stairs to help her. He also brings along the medicine and food he bought for her. Elsewhere, Junho can't seem to forget Hongju. He still harbors feelings for his ex years ago. When they were together, Hongju accompanied him to an interview with a journalist. When asked who he first thought of after winning a Young Writers Award, Junho looked toward Hongju, who had fallen asleep beside him. At that moment, he shared that he wanted to celebrate this joy with a special person in his life. To him, she had brought out a gentler, more expressive side in his writing and had always been his support. Despite this, Junho went through a dark period, plagued by panic attacks, an inability to write, and the loss of numerous contracts, leaving him financially and emotionally strained. Unable to share this struggle with Hongju, he felt compelled to sacrifice their relationship. This time, however, Junho is determined not to repeat his past mistakes and has resolved to win back Hongju's heart. The scene flashes back to the past, where Hongju and Huyang are stuck at the reservoir. To pass the time, they chat, and the conversation grows more interesting when they realize they both love anime. Huyang even confides that he once dreamed of becoming an animation director, though there's something holding him back from pursuing it. Hongju, inspired by his dreams, confidently declares she'll pursue her own dream job. Though she initially struggled to envision her career path, hearing about Huyang's aspirations made her realize she shares the same dream. Jokingly, Hongju promises to give 5% of her salary to Huyang for borrowing his dream. Back in the present, Huyang prepares breakfast for Hongju with some help from Heiji and Sangpil, allowing him to make her favorite dishes. Before leaving, he reminds Hongju of her past promise. She laughs it off, saying it was a ridiculous pledge she made without thinking clearly, especially since she's now an animation producer, not a director. Huyang chuckles, admitting he was just teasing her. Meanwhile, after learning that Hongju has returned to work, Junho shows up at her apartment, only to feel jealous upon seeing her with Huyang. In a fit of frustration, he threatens to cancel their project. Unfazed, Hongju tells him to leave. After he's gone, Huyang notices Hongju looking downcast, even in tears, and he moves to comfort her, wishing for her recovery, both from her leg injury and heartbreak. During this time, a tender moment unfolds between them, leading to a kiss. Flashing back to 2013, where Huyang is seen asking Hongju to wait for him, only to dash onto a bus and leave her behind. Reflecting on this past incident, Huyang feels their romance once had a false start. Returning to the present, Huyang reassures Hongju that their recent kiss wasn't just a fleeting moment, as he truly has feelings for her. He admits it took him a long time to gather the courage to say this. Although Hongju insists she could never like him, Huyang believes that the future is uncertain. He hopes she'll give their kiss some serious thought. Elsewhere, Heiji starts to notice how handsome Kyo-won Taek is, and as she approaches to chat with him, he shyly withdraws, avoiding her gaze. Meanwhile, Hongju helps Sangpil peel onions at his restaurant. When asked if she's dating anyone, Sangpil jokingly complains that Hongju and Heiji always ignore his request to set him up with someone. However, he admits he's not too concerned, as his restaurant's success is his current priority. It turned out, Sangpil follows a principle of not dating until his business is stable. But he can't shake the feeling that something is different about Hongju, suspecting that she may indeed be seeing someone. On another place, Uncle Wook is annoyed with Mrs. Bay for repeatedly parking carelessly, sparking a debate between them. According to workplace gossip, Mrs. Bay holds a grudge against him, as she intended to buy the building now occupied by Uncle Wook 3 years ago. Confidently, Uncle Wook believes Mrs. Bay hasn't gotten over him as her first love. Mrs. Bay laughs heartily at this, dismissing him as pathetic. Meanwhile, After Kyo-taek has repeatedly avoided her, Hae-ji finally gets the chance to talk to him. She invites Kyo-taek for a walk and a meal the next day as a thank you gesture, feeling that, thanks to his insights about Hongju and Huyang, she can finally let go and be more supportive of her friends' love lives. At the same time, when Huyang learns that Hongju is at Sang-pil's restaurant, he rushes over, only to be disappointed as she has already left upon hearing he was on his way. Elsewhere, in a drunken state, Junho reads through dozens of love letters that Hongju once sent him. He tries to reach out to her, messaging her repeatedly, but she doesn't respond. Flashing back, when Hongju learned that Huyang had moved to America, she felt crushed. The night before he left, she had wanted to talk with him about her own dreams of becoming an animation director. In the present, Hongju is shown meditating to calm her mind. Soon, Sang-pil invites her to join him, Huyang, and Uncle Wook for a beach outing. Though reluctant at first, Hongju eventually agrees. During the trip, Huyang keeps glancing at her, making her feel awkward. Hongju grows frustrated, feeling unable to avoid his advances as he continues to express his feelings and seek her attention. Upon arriving at the guest house, they unpack and then join Sang-pil and Uncle Wook for some fishing. Huyang and Hongju head toward the seawall to fish, while Sang-pil enjoys the view and keeps an eye on Uncle Wook, who is napping. Elsewhere, the publishing agency handling Junho proposes contract terms to Mrs. Bay, requesting full production rights, which would grant them complete control over resource management for the project. Concerned for Junho, they also suggest replacing Hongju as the lead producer. Mrs. Bay disagrees, arguing that Hongju is highly professional and deeply understands the novel. Ultimately, Mrs. Bay decides that Hongju should work in Junho's studio starting next week so that they can adapt and maintain a good working relationship. Although reluctant, Hongju has no choice but to comply with the decision. Not long after, as the tide rises, Hongju suddenly strolls along the beach, prompting Huyang to follow out of concern. Just as she nearly slips, Huyang catches her in time to steady her. Meanwhile, Hae-ji and Kyo-taek are seen dressed up, preparing to go somewhere. When Hae-ji's older brother arrives and asks her to look at some photos, Kyo-taek mistakenly assumes that Hae-ji is about to go on a blind date set up by her brother. Back with Hongju and Huyang, they spend a relaxing time collecting clams, sea cucumbers, and octopus around the rocky shoreline. With the beach now empty and the waves rising, they decide it's best to head back to the guest house. Soon after, Hae-ji and Kyo-taek arrive and join them. At that moment, Hae-ji seems downcast and her mood is noticeably off. Sensing this, Hongju invites her for a private chat along the shore. During their conversation, Hae-ji confesses that she isn't very close to Kyo-taek and hasn't actually dated him. Yet, she assures Hongju that she doesn't have feelings for Huyang either. However, she expresses another unease, feeling somewhat rejected. Hae-ji had invited Kyo-taek on a date, only to be met with a response that left her uncertain. Surprised with her confession, Hongju remarks that she thought Hae-ji only liked handsome men. Hae-ji admits she's now drawn to something else, appreciating Kyo-taek's broad shoulders, which seem to convey reliability and a kind heart. Soon after, dinner is then served. Hongju and Hae-ji then join the others to enjoy the meal together. That night, Hongju has a dream of her mother walking away with a suitcase in hand. She also sees her aunt slowly leaving her behind. Years pass in her dream, and she experiences the loss of another loved one, Junho, which reopens past wounds. Now, it seems that yet another loved one, Huyang, is about to leave for America. As a result, she wakes up feeling unsettled. Not long after, in a plan to give Hongju and Huyang some time alone, the others head back to Seoul without telling her. Shortly after, Huyang is seen prepares breakfast. During this time, Hongju then makes a heartfelt request, asking him not to return to America. Her words fill him with joy, and he promises to stay. In that moment, they share a romantic kiss, hoping their feelings will remain strong. Now officially a couple, Hongju feels a bit awkward, realizing she needs time to adjust. They enjoy a cheerful lunch together at a restaurant, and that evening, they decide to return to Seoul. Upon arrival, Neither wants to part ways just yet, but their moment is abruptly interrupted by Uncle Wook's arrival. Several days later, Uncle Wook is taken aback when Huyang's mother, Do-sun, shares the news that Huyang has officially resigned from his job in America. Huyang confirms the decision, explaining that he truly cares for Hongju and doesn't want to leave Korea. Upon hearing this, Uncle Wook urges Huyang to reconsider his decision. After everything that happened with his parents, the family had worked hard to make amends. For them, Huyang and Rock Asset are both deeply precious. To abandon the company, in Uncle Wook's eyes, would mean destroying both. Huyang understands but asks that Uncle Wook keep this a secret from Hongju. Late that night, Huyang calls Hongju, wanting to come up to her apartment. However, embarrassed by her untidy space, Hongju declines, claiming she's already sleepy. Before ending the call, Huyang sweetly expresses his feelings for her. The next day, Hongju accompanies Heiji to buy a gift for Kyoantaek. They also spend the day together at the salon, dining, and enjoying some rice wine at Sangpil's restaurant. At the same time, Huyang feels a twinge of jealousy that Hongju chose to spend her day with Heiji instead. As Hongju and Heiji continue their antics, Sangpil grows increasingly exasperated by their silliness. Shortly after, Hongju spots Uncle Wook, heavily intoxicated and in low spirits over his first love, Mrs. Bay. At that moment, Uncle Wook is heartbroken, still bitter about being suddenly dumped by Mrs. Bay 20 years ago. As Uncle Wook rambles on, Huyang arrives to pick up Hongju, grabbing her hand and whisking her away. The following morning, Hongju is busy selecting the perfect outfit for her date, as is Huyang. At the same time, Heiji is preparing for a mountain hike. Her father, Baknam, usually hikes every weekend with Kyoantaek, though it appears he won't be joining this time due to his absence. Baknam then showers praise on Kyoantaek, describing him as an honest, respectful man and even considering him like a son. Heiji blushes with joy, hinting to her father about her closeness to Kyoantaek. Hearing this, Baknam laughs, amused, interpreting her reaction as jealousy because he once tried setting Kyoantaek up with his eldest daughter. Not long after, Huyang and Hongju's date is suddenly interrupted by Heiji, who arrives disappointed that Kyoantaek is unwell and unable to spend time with her. Frustrated, she wonders why Kyoantaek doesn't seem enthusiastic about dating her, even though she's certain he likes her. Huyang suggests she should ask him directly for confirmation. Inspired, Hongju suggests they pay a visit to Kyoantaek's home, and they set off together. Meanwhile, Kyoantaek is having a conversation with his mother, who urges him to start dating so he doesn't get used to doing everything alone. Soon after, they run into Heiji, who's holding a dish she brought over. During this time, Heiji politely introduces herself, and, fortunately, Kyoantaek's mother is quite taken with her. However, Kyoantaek tries to explain that he and Heiji aren't romantically involved, disappointing both his mother and Heiji. Realizing her plan to get closer to Kyoantaek isn't working as she hoped, Heiji apologizes for the disturbance and takes her leave. Elsewhere, Junho is having drinks with Baknam, who advises him to stop bothering Hongju, as he's already caused her so much sadness and heartbreak. Not only that, Baknam also stresses that Junho isn't suitable for Hongju at all, adding that if either of his daughters dated someone like Junho, he'd warn them to stay far away. Not long after, Huyang and Hongju are at an art gallery. At that moment, Huyang confides that every time Hongju calls him by his full name, his heart races as if it might leap out of his chest. He admits he's always waiting for her to say his name, which reassures him of his feelings for her. Soon after, they cut their outing short as Huyang suddenly has urgent business to attend to at the office. Back in her room, Hongju opens a box and pulls out a piece of paper, the career plan she had once intended to share with Huyang, but never did. She reflects on the moment when she first felt her heart race because of him. Elsewhere, Huyang meets with his mother, Do-sun, who has unexpectedly come to Korea. Regarding his decision to resign, Do-sun mentions that she has yet to make a final decision. She's surprised to learn that her son still has feelings for the same woman, knowing that this kind of dilemma is out of character for him. However, Huyang asserts that from now on, he'll be making his own choices, whether they're the best for him or not. Meanwhile, Kyoantaek finds a return package on his desk, a pair of shoes sent back by Heiji. This gesture makes him feel guilty, as he senses he may have hurt her. That morning, Huyang takes his mother to a destination. As they stop at a traffic light, Do-sun notices Hongju across the street. She then mutters that this is why she dislikes Seoul. It's simply too small. On another place, Kyoan-taek realizes that Heiji's apology may not be enough. She hints that she won't wait indefinitely for certainty from him. Meanwhile, Hongju begins working at Junho's studio. His space is filled with stacks of love letters, favorite books, photos capturing memories with Hongju, and even psychotropic medications. However, Hongju seems unfazed and chooses to ignore it all. Soon after, Do-sun's arrival at Rock Asset Korea creates a stir among the employees, including Uncle Wook, as she's a well-known, strict director. On the other hand, Junho attempts to express his feelings to Hongju and apologize for his past mistakes. Despite his sincere plea, Hongju remains disappointed and unable to forgive him, feeling that none of what happened was her fault. At the same time, Do-sun firmly tells her son that she won't return to America without him. Frustrated, Huyang responds that if she insists, he's willing to rebel or cause trouble to resist her control. Meanwhile, in Mrs. Bay's office, Hongju confidently announces her decision to step down from Junho's project, which Mrs. Bay respects without objection. Although Hongju's mood is somewhat low, spending time with Huyang lifts her spirits. They spend the day gaming and singing karaoke, which lightens his mood as well. Hongju then suspects that he might be stressed from work, but Huyang openly admits that he's resigned from his job. Shocked, she questions his decision, but he reassures her, asking her to trust him and not worry. After they part, Huyang, knowing Hongju wants no further involvement with Junho, deletes all files related to the animation project My Lover Avantgarde and even discards a stack of the novels. The next morning, while jogging, Huyang crosses paths with Hongju as she heads to work. Suddenly, Do-sun steps out of a taxi and catches sight of her son, holding hands with Hongju. At that moment, Hongju bows and introduces herself, but Do-sun asks to speak privately with her son. Because of this, Hongju bids them goodbye and leaves. Soon after, Uncle Wook arrives, having been summoned by Huyang regarding his mother's sudden visit. Do-sun's firm decision to stay in Korea leaves Uncle Wook frustrated, as he had hoped she would return to America. Out of concern for Hongju, Uncle Wook texts her, advising her to avoid Do-sun as much as possible. Later, Huyang meets Hongju as she returns from work, confirming Uncle Wook's message. Feeling uneasy, Hongju wonders if she should stay with Heiji for a while, sensing that Huyang's mother may not like her. However, Huyang assures her that there's no need to leave and encourages her not to worry. Afterward, Huyang goes to Sangpil's restaurant for lunch, but finds it bustling with customers. He decides to help out, but unaccustomed to heavy work, he ends up breaking a few bowls. Embarrassed, he promises to pay for the damages. Over time, his good looks attract playful attention from some customers, who can't resist teasing him as he works. Meanwhile, as Uncle Wook is about to leave the office, he spots Mrs. Bay and tries to strike up a conversation, attempting to get closer to her. Mrs. Bay warns him to stop bothering her, but suddenly, Uncle Wook leans in, his face close to hers as if he's about to kiss her. Unexpectedly, Mrs. Bay closes her eyes instinctively, only to realize it was a misunderstanding, leaving her flustered and irritated. At the same time, Hongju is annoyed to find Junho standing in front of her apartment, flying paper planes made from love letters he wrote 13 years ago. Because of this, Hongju warns him to stop clinging to the past and to dispose of these remnants of their memories. Junho, however, hands her the stack of paper planes, asking her to be the one to throw them away since they represent his feelings. Just then, one of the planes accidentally hits Do-sun in the face as she observes them, overhearing their conversation. As Hongju gathers the scattered paper planes, Do-sun remarks that it seems Hongju has a rather complicated love life. Do-sun then warns that Hongju is not suitable for her son, reminding her that Huyang will soon take over the headquarters of Rock Asset and is destined for great success. She then asks Hongju to let Huyang go. However, Hongju replies that everything Huyang has done has been his own choice and that ever since they reunited after 13 years, he has been consistently caring and sweet to her. She insists she won't give up on their relationship, but Do-sun cautions her to end it before she gets hurt. Soon after, Hu-yang approaches Hongju, who is visibly upset. He urges her to trust him more, reassuring her that he is capable of handling his own choices. After learning about Hongju's challenges with Junho from Heiji and Sangpil, he also encourages her to be more open about her struggles. However, Hongju insists that she's already dealt with it and, feeling misunderstood, retreats into her apartment. Later that day, Hongju waits outside a high school for Heiji to finish teaching. Watching two students try to skip class stirs memories of her own past with Hu-yang. Reflecting on Hu-yang's care and concern for her, she feels guilty for her actions the previous night. As a result, over lunch, Hongju confides in Heiji about her issues with Hu-yang. At that moment, Heiji reassures her that Hu-yang has no intention of leaving her or going back to America, despite his mother's pressure. Meanwhile, Sangpil visits Hu-yang at home, concerned about his low spirits. As a result, he prepares a meal for them, and as they eat, they talk. Sangpil shares that, when Hongju was drunk, she revealed that she often has recurring nightmares. Since childhood, she's dreamt of people and places, always chasing after them as they seem to disappear without saying goodbye, leaving her feeling anxious and abandoned. Meanwhile, Kyo-won takes steps in a block a ball headed straight for Heiji, resulting in a bruised and injured face. While treating his wounds in the school clinic, Kyo-won finally confesses his feelings, telling Heiji that he loves her. Hearing this, Heiji accepts his feelings, and they decide to start dating. During this time, Kyo-won admits he feels guilty for having hurt her feelings in the past. Elsewhere, Hu-yang and Hongju are enjoying dinner together, with Hongju complimenting the delicious ramen Hu-yang made. She thinks Hu-yang seems talented in many things, but believes he might be better suited to live in America, as she doesn't want him to jeopardize his career. Hu-yang gently explains that he, too, has weaknesses and that being with Hongju has helped him understand what he truly wants and doesn't want in life. In a way, he feels that dreams feel closer to reality when he's with her. Hu-yang shares that his parents divorced when he was in 11th grade, which led him to move to America, hoping to spare his mother from further pain. The next day, Do-sun catches her son leaving Hongju's apartment, but she says nothing, merely walking away. As Hongju heads to work, she hurries to catch up with Do-sun to walk alongside her. Hoping to build a better relationship for the sake of her connection with Hu-yang, she expresses that she not only cares deeply for Hu-yang, but also respects and admires Do-sun. Later, Hu-yang decides to join Yeju Investment, Uncle Wook's company. Uncle Wook also advises Do-sun to be more understanding of her son, reminding her that Hu-yang is only trying to be more independent. Meanwhile, Kyo-won tells his fellow teachers that he doesn't have a girlfriend, which frustrates Heiji. While Kyo-won prefers to keep their relationship private, Heiji insists she isn't worried about rumors spreading. Despite this, they both still feel awkward around others when they are together. That night, Hongju spends time with Hu-yang, sharing an open-hearted conversation. At that moment, she recalls realizing she had feelings for him back in high school, and remembering these moments makes her blush. The next morning, Do-sun suddenly visits Hongju's apartment and hands her an envelope. In the background, Hu-yang notices his mother's suitcase in the living room. It turned out, Do-sun announces she's decided to return to America, as the headquarters requires one of them to be there. She also reveals that the true reason they moved to America 10 years ago was because of the opportunities there for both of them. Confident in her son's abilities, she acknowledges that she's rarely interfered in his decisions, knowing he can solve his own problems. However, she adds that she plans to file a petition moving forward, though the real intention of it remains unclear. Unexpectedly, Do-sun accuses her son of using insider information to secure investments, suggesting that his return to Korea was also business-motivated, especially since she hasn't yet accepted his resignation. Despite this, she doesn't want trivial issues to disrupt his future. Not only that, the envelope she gave him contains a credit card, signaling her subtle acceptance of Hongju's presence in his life. Do-sun then expresses her hope that Hongju will eventually join Hu-yang in America, confident that, with Hongju by his side, Huyang will feel more assured as he faces challenges, including the upcoming legal battle. Later, Hongju discusses this with Baknam, Heiji's father, admitting her deep affection for Huyang and her desire to build a life with him. She doesn't want to miss this opportunity, but feels uncertain about moving to America. Hearing this, Baknam reassures her that facing the challenges of a new environment together can ease the burden and advises her to consider the decision carefully. Sometime later, in front of Baknam and some colleagues, Hyoan-taek shows his romantic side, boldly announcing his relationship with Heiji and even declaring he plans to marry her. Overjoyed, Baknam quickly gives his blessing. At Sangpil's restaurant, Uncle Wook orchestrates a setup to sit with Mrs. Bae, and it seems she's warming up to him again. As a result, they share a cozy, romantic meal together. Meanwhile, Huyang confides that he can't imagine life without Hongju, just as he can't imagine life without his mother. He expresses his hope that Hongju will join him in America. Although Hongju feels similarly, she apologizes, admitting that the idea of moving abroad weighs on her. Huyang understands and gives her a novel he retrieved from the trash. Once she had thrown out, a memento urging her to continue pursuing her dreams. Huyang then explains that his stay in America will be temporary. He plans to enjoy memorable moments with her. Together, they envision dining out, decorating a Christmas tree, taking photos, and watching animated films. The next day, Hongju shares that Huyang will be returning to America for a short while. Heiji worries that he may not return, leaving Hongju waiting indefinitely. But Hongju believes in his sincerity. Ever since he entered her life, each day has felt brighter and more fulfilling. On Christmas Eve, they celebrate joyfully, officially marking the start of their relationship. The following day, as Huyang prepares to depart for America, Hongju surprises him at the airport, revealing her decision to go with him. Overjoyed, Huyang rushes to her, and they share a heartfelt, romantic kiss. Moral lesson from the story: if you avoid someone long enough, they'll just assume you're mysterious and wise instead of just scared and awkward. Sometimes love is like fishing. You wait forever, then realize you forgot the bait.